This is an unboxing of the new Arturia Minilab 3. I just got this in the mail. I actually opened up the top of the box and realized, oh yeah, I need to do an unboxing video because people like that. And but I haven't actually gone inside the box. I've just popped open the top. This is the box as it came from Sweetwater, and I actually thought, gee, this thing looks a lot bigger than I thought it would be. And it also looks like box got a little bit smashed on the side, so let's see if that has any impact on the actual instrument itself. So let's go ahead and open it up. And luckily Sweetwater does a good job of packing, so even though we've got this smash on the side, it didn't even really touch the actual box for the Minilab. So here is the Minilab. Yes, it's a lot smaller than the box that it was packed in here, so we can just discard that. And so here is the actual box itself. Actually got a nice little convenient carry handle, so maybe you could even reuse this box as a little case for it if need be. All right, so I think this slides out here, maybe. Yep, that's what it does. Again, that could be a little case. I'll throw that aside here. There we go. All right, so minimal amount of packaging. I know that they're trying to make this more environmentally friendly in its packaging. And we'll put this aside as well. All right, so here is the Minilab. And let's get this plastic out from around it. All right, that looks pretty good. Knobs actually feel a little stiff. This has a nice, what do you call it, where you can feel the clicks in it when you turn it. I forget what you call that, where these are smooth turning. That way, I think this is probably more for changing presets, so you can feel the click each time you turn it. Sliders feel decent. But yeah, these knobs here are very stiff, which we'll have to see how that functions with the actual software. These buttons feel as expected. Now, what I can say is I've always been disappointed with current modern controller keyboards because they're so cheaply made. And this is just, you know, right now the going price on this for a new Minilab 3 is $109. And so you can't expect much for $109, but this is actually seems to be pretty well constructed for the price. Definitely a lot better than this MIDI controller that I've had for almost 10 years now, this Novation, which you can just hear how poorly put together and plasticky this thing is. I've always hated the feel of this keyboard and the action, but I have to admit it has lasted a long time. Of course, I tend to keep good care of my gear, and it's mostly only been used in the studio, but still, that's a keyboard almost 10 years ago I paid about $250 for, and this actually feels a lot more sturdy than that does. So cool, yeah, the bottom of the instrument looks like that. So it's got 6 little rubber feet there that'll help keep it on the surface of a table. This table's a little wobbly and it's not flat, so it's not the ideal table to demonstrate that on, but we'll get this moved over to my actual studio desk and we'll start putting it to use and see how it works. All right, so before I get started on actually putting this to use in the studio, one of the things I wanted to check for you is the actual fact that since it's so small, the idea of having it is so that it's a portable device that you can take with you. So what I've got is my bag that I've had for, gosh, years, that I use for carrying, gear around, and I want to make sure it fits in my bag. This is actually a bag I got free with an order of some stuff that I bought at a music store that no longer exists, unfortunately, Nova Music. And they used to always send out a lot of freebies and stuff whenever you bought gear. And this is one. This came in one of the orders that I placed, and it was a pleasant surprise. And it's been a very handy bag. I've had this bag for about 10 years, and so yeah, if you're looking for a bag, they still sell this bag. The brand is OGIO, I guess is what it is, and for some reason it's got a Moto logo embroidered on the front there. But anyway, so yeah, it fits right down in here. Quite nice. Ta-da! And fits in all the different compartments here, I think. Looks like it will. Yeah, this is the actual compartment for the laptop. This is the one I usually put my laptop in. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze in that one, so you probably don't want to use it in that compartment. But in the main compartment, it slid down perfectly fine. Also, there's a front compartment here that's padded. That's, I think, also used for laptop, but I usually put my laptop back here. So look, fits in there quite nicely. Snug as a bug. Look at that. Perfect. And this is a nice little front padded area. So this might be actually where I carry it, because then I can still have my cables here in the center, and my guitar strap, and laptop can still, or iPads can still slide back here. And yeah, so looks like it's definitely very, very portable. And one of the concerns, of course, is if you've got these sliders and knobs, even though this is a padded front, there's a concern, will that mess up the knobs or sliders or break anything off? And actually, it actually looks pretty good. I feel confident putting this in here. And also what's interesting, once I was looking down on the device itself, and I can actually see that these plastic, they are plastic knobs, plastic sliders, but I can see the metal that the plastic is on. So, and it looks like these are got some good metal in there holding it together. So I can actually see the metal down in there, and I can see, looks like metal screws, we call it bolts, holding the knob down. So then they've got the plastic slider on top, or the plastic knob and slider on top of the metal. So again, it looks like it's pretty good construction for such a affordable device. All right, again, before I get to the actual using the Minilab here in the studio, I forgot that I actually years ago tried to buy a mini keyboard controller for portable use, and I'd got this iRig, and boy, I hated this thing. So this is the iRig, and yeah, this thing just was not reliable at all. The keys on it are pretty terrible, and it's also got this one kind of broken key here. Like right after I first got it, I accidentally snagged it and it popped it right up, and it's never been level since. But the key action is terrible on it. It's pretty light, but since it's a lot longer than the Keylab, it doesn't actually fit in the carrying case that I was just showing you. It's too long for it, so it kind of sticks up out of the top. And also, like I said, the key action was terrible. But the main thing that made it just unusable, and I put it away in the closet and forgot about it. That's why I didn't even think about it until just now that I actually still had this thing. But it's got this little mini USB connection on the side. And I mean, you just barely kind of move the keyboard around, or even while you're playing it, it would just get loose and disconnect from the computer. So you were constantly losing your connection to the computer, which was just so incredibly frustrating. So yeah, this thing, yeah, it's junk. This, of course, the keys feel a whole lot better than that. And again, I haven't actually played it you know, with any hooked up to anything yet. I'm just playing with my fingers and comparing the two. This one's definitely a lot nicer keys. Also, the keys are a tad longer than on that iRig. The only thing I noticed on the Arturia, which I'm kind of interested about, I don't know if this is like this on all the devices or just maybe mine, but all the keys are quiet except for this top key. I don't know if you can hear that. So all the other keys, quiet. You can kind of hear a little click in there. But all the rest of the keys are quiet. So I don't know if that's going to impact anything. Don't know if that's just on my device or if on all the device, maybe somehow the way the mechanism is set up in there, maybe the top key always clicks a little bit on these. I don't know. But I at least wanted to point that out. Okay, now let's go ahead and get this thing set up so we can use it. All right, so now I've got the Arturia Minilab 3 on my computer desk here, and I'm going to set it up. One of the things I do like about the Arturia is that it came with this really cool USB plug that's at a 45-degree angle. Such a clever, great idea. I wish other people did this. Solves a big problem of cords sticking out on the back. So yeah, it's got a nice tight connection there. I like that. A really solid click when I plug that in. I've got a Studio One open on my computer. I'm just going to plug it in. This thing didn't really come with any directions that I saw, so I'm just going to figure out as I go along. It should be pretty easy. I'm just going to plug it in and see if Studio One recognizes it or if I have to restart Studio One, but I'm assuming it'll recognize it. It's usually the case. All right, get him there. All right, woo, powered up. Okay, so it is plugged in now to Studio One, and all right. So it's not auto mapping to Studio One controls. I'm sure there's something I've got to do here. I'm hitting the shift key and that pulls up the start button, transport controls, stop, start, record. But it's not doing anything, which is kind of a bummer. I wish that it wasn't two hands in order to get to that control, but oh well. But I wish it would actually work. So I'm sure there's some mappings and stuff I've got to do here. Okay, so I've got Analog Lab loaded, which comes with the Arturia, although I have not done anything with installing anything. I'm just realizing I probably got to register the controller with my software at Arturia. They've got a little login that you register stuff. And then that'll probably give me access to the software that comes with it. But I've been a long time Arturia user. This is just my first hardware device from Arturia, but I've been using their software for like 20 years. So I've already got the Analog Lab, the newest version. One thing to be aware of with the new version of Analog Lab is that it doesn't come with as many presets as it used to. However, I still have all of the presets from the earlier versions, plus I have I've got everything in V Collection 8 up to that point. So I've got most of all of these instruments, and I've got a huge library and whatnot. So I've got more than what you'll have out of the box if this is your first time getting Analog Lab. I think it's somewhere like around 2,000 presets that it comes with now, where in the past it came with like over 6,000. So just something to keep in mind. But Analog Lab is it's a good library, and the Arturia instruments are really good. So if this is the only thing you have, you'll still have a pretty cool plug-in to use with the device. Let's okay, I've never used it with this controller, so let's see how we make this work. By default, it's not doing anything. I'm sure I've got, like I said, I just plugged this thing in. I haven't installed anything or did anything else, so I'm sure there's some setup that I've got to do. So let's see. Yeah, it's not auto mapping to anything here, which you would expect. So yeah, I've obviously there's something else that I've got to do, and like I said, it didn't come with a manual, so yeah, right now it's just operating as a keyboard controller. So okay, so I did look in the box and I did see this. I somehow missed it, so it does tell you to register online and download the latest firmware and whatnot. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to return. I went to my account and I registered a new product, and now it gave me this page, tells me what to do here, and so I've already got the Arturia Software Center software already in place. I don't need to download that. I'm logged into it here, and so I scroll down, I see my Minilab right here. I'm going to activate that. Also looks like I've got some updates to do, catch up on, so I'll do that at some point here soon too. And let's go ahead and update Minilab. That'll probably update the firmware, I am guessing. So now downloading Analog Lab 5, which I already have Analog Lab 5. Don't do that. Let's see if I can pause that, because I already have that. I don't want it to. Yeah, let's pause that. No, we don't want to download paused. Yeah, we already got that one. So I thought it was going to do the firmware. So we've already got Analog Lab, so I'm not going to worry about doing that. It's activated. That should be good enough. But there is this other software that's showing here, the MIDI Control Center. I am going to guess that this is what I actually need in order to be able to do all the mappings and whatnot. So I am going to download this and get that installed. All right, so I downloaded and installed this MIDI Control Center that I got from the once I was logged into my account with Arturia. And so now it's opening up this this control panel on my software, or whatever you want to call it. So it now gives me the ability to update the firmware, which I'm going to do. And of course, it goes without saying that the Minilab 3 has to be connected in order for this to work, because it's updating the firmware on the Minilab itself. All right. It looks like we're all set now. Okay, so I've got the MIDI software, MIDI Control Center up, and going to figure out how to use this. Obviously, yeah, it looks like you can mouse over any of these controls to change what each thing does. And as you can see down in the lower part of the screen the different options that are available there. So if I click on the pad here, I go output, and then I can do some different things there. So send out on different MIDI channels. It looks like, yeah, map these pads to different notes. So it looks like that's what we're doing there. Also change the color. Okay, so we can change the color of the pad. Let's see if we do a knob. Got a lot of different options here. Mini and max value, okay. The slider, it's kind of the same thing, looks like, as the knobs for the most part. Oh, you could set it up as a drawbar, nice. Which I'm going to guess will allow it to flip. So if you, instead of going up to make the drawbar increase, you would pull it down to make it increase. That's going to be my guess. Kind of like a fade or flip. So we'll have to test that out as well. Cool. Okay, and it's got some device memories. Yeah, that's where you can set up different custom settings, I do believe. So once I get this mapped out, I can save this as one of my device memories and then switch between them. That's cool. And all right, so it looks like we are in business. Okay, so I've spent a little time playing around with the Minilab 3, getting familiar with it and the different settings. Right now I've got it set up with Cantabile, which is a VST host on the PC, It's kind of like a main stage version for PC, and so it's good for live use when you want to use a controller keyboard in your computer for live use. And so right now I've got analog loaded up and being controlled from the Minilab. So open that up. And all of the controls are mapped. Now, I'm not a big fan of the new mappings that they have in Analog Lab 5, but they're all there. One thing you want to make sure of is setting the controller that you want it to use. Like, and here's just the generic mode, and I have it set on Minilab, or you can have it on Minilab 2. I'm guessing that maybe since I'm not using the analog version that came with the Arturia, because I already have Analog Lab and I didn't want to downgrade to a lower version or with less presets or whatever. So anyway, I just left it alone. So I don't know if on the actual new version of Analog Lab, it'll actually have Minilab 3 here as one of the selectors. But for right now, it's just got Minilab and Minilab Mark II. Now, of interest, if I put it on Minilab, and then you've got this rotary controller here, this encoder here that controls your sounds, it actually skips every 2 presets when you're trying to select something. And also, it doesn't quite work. So as you can see, I'm just scrolling through and selecting a sound, and it doesn't change. So if I go to Minilab Mark II, oops, I can do the right thing here. Now I can get it to go 1 preset at a time. But what's weird is I have to, you can feel it click a couple times before it actually then moves to the next one. But at least I can go 1 preset at a time. And actually, when you're moving faster, it's not as new. It's smoother, I guess you could say. It's easier to work when you're moving the knob fast. But when you're moving it really slow, you've got to go a couple clicks until it goes to the next one. Now if I push, see, it'll actually now work. So the key here then is to use Minilab 2 as the controller in order to make this encoder work correctly. Unless they've got a Minilab 3 MIDI controller in the newer version of Analog Lab, which I'm sure they'll have if they don't have it now. All right, so another thing to point out on here is the shift key, using it in conjunction with this third pad. If I push this, now watch this display. The display always tells you what's going on here, even though it's teeny tiny and you can barely read it. But if I push here, it's on Arturia right now. If I push now, it goes into DAW mode, which then allows you to control your DAW. Push it again, it goes to the user banks, where you can then have your different custom settings that you've set up there. So in order to use Analog Lab with this and have this encoder work correctly, you have to be in Arturia mode, and now the encoder will work. If I'm in another mode, like say user 1, it doesn't do diddly squat. So that's something important to note there. So make sure you're on Arturia, and now it will work. There you go. All right. And so again, I mentioned earlier that these encoders were pretty stiff. Again, I'm starting to get a little bit more used to them now, but they fight you more than what you'd expect on other controllers. You kind of really feel like you have to kind of manhandle them a little bit, but it's not too bad. The sliders though work really well, and again, it always tells you what's going on in display anytime you're doing something. And even though I don't have any modulation on that particular one, let's find one with some actual modulation. Of course, all the presets I'm picking don't have, there we go. So the little trackpad controls for pitch and modulation are actually pretty easy to use. I was worried that they wouldn't work that well, but they actually work really good. And what's important to notice on the the mod wheel trackpad is what I'm going to call it here. It stays wherever you left it at. So if you want to take it off, you've got to pull it all the way down. Whereas the pitch bend, once you release it, springs back to the center detent. On a normal pitch bend controller, it just kind of knows to go back to 0. Then of course you've got the hold button. It stays on. The notes stay on while the hold button is on. Of course you got the octave up. So the octave button, transpose buttons are very handy. Also, if you go into the shift mode, then you can go into chord mode by pushing this button, because the hold button also works as chord mode. I play my own chords, so I don't worry about that. You also have a transpose. When you're in shift mode, the octave buttons turn into transpose buttons. And then also when you're in shift mode, these keys here, you can change the MIDI channel that you're sending out of, which can be really handy if you want to quickly change, like say you've got your software set up to have a bunch of different VSTs set on different MIDI channels, and you can quickly switch between them, so that's handy. The main way though that I use, I'm not, like I said, I'm not too fond of these mappings that they have on here on V-Control, and honestly typically I always set my own mapping. So, and also I also want to point out that this controller works good for other instruments by other companies, not just Arturia. So here's an example, Repo 1 by Yuhi. So just having a arpeggiated sequence going on here, and I've already pre-mapped it. So everything's pre-mapped. It's pretty easy to do the mapping, really. I mean, I always just go into MIDI learn mode. So if I wanted to do the amp envelope to say the sliders, I just do the MIDI learn. And now oh yeah, I also pre-mapped some other stuff on there. So you're seeing when I'm doing one knob, it's actually doing multiple knobs because I forgot that I already pre-mapped a few other things on there. But you can go in there and you can actually unlearn those. See MIDI table right there. So you can actually come in here and then X out whichever ones you don't want to have in use anymore. This is at least on the Arturia stuff. So it really, the same thing applies for any plugin. You're just doing the MIDI learn and you're assigning stuff to it, and it works really easy. So that's cool. Okay, so now I've got Studio One open, and one of the things to know for Studio One is there wasn't any pre-built-in configuration with Studio One. I thought there would be, but it really wasn't a big deal setting up the like the transport controls and really just using it with MIDI mapping just like you would with any software synth. So basically I just went in here and I set up a Minilab 3 setting, and I set up these as buttons here. So whenever I go to stop, play, I set those up in here in the MIDI configuration control settings here. And so now I just do shift, stop, shift, play, shift, stop, record, oops. So all that's in there. I even got tap tempo, so I can tap something really quick. Actually, it's not working right now. Did I turn that off? Let's see here. So tap tempo. No, it's assigned. So tap tempo should be working. It was just a minute ago, and now it's not. So I'm not sure why. I might have to redo that. Let's try this again. Yeah, it's set up, tap tempo. What am I doing wrong? Anyway, so it was just working a minute ago, of course, before I started recording the video. So, but you get the idea. It's pretty easy just to set up your different MIDI bindings there and making it work however you want. All right, so here's another use that I'll have with the Arturia. I'm not a big fan of teeny tiny keys, although the keys on this actually work quite well, surprisingly well for how small they are. But I definitely like actual full-size keys, So I've got a digital piano here. Now I don't have the wire, it's not long enough yet, but so that's not ideally, of course, I wouldn't have the wire hanging in front of it, but when I get a longer wire to go to the computer, this might be one way that I might actually use the Arturia as just as a little sit on top controller for the digital piano. That way I can play the digital piano while actually controlling the sound from the controller here. So that's another idea that I'm going to use it for. That way I'm playing with real piano action on a digital piano, but controlling the sound that I'm playing with the digital piano on the Arturia. All right, so that's just a quick overview of the Arturia Minilab 3. I think it's a great little controller for the price. I'm still kind of getting used to it and getting familiar with how to get the most out of it, but it's definitely doing all the basic MIDI controller functionality that you would expect out of it. I'm not sure if this encoder knob is, you know, the best. I don't know. It's the idea is cool to be able to use in conjunction with Analog Lab to quickly scroll through your presets. Oh, and you can also scroll through playlists as well, and it works really well for that. But I think since it doesn't work with other software instruments, it kind of renders it non-useful for any other VSTs other than the Arturia stuff. But still, it's a cool integration for those of you that don't have a lot of soft synths and you're getting the V. If I can speak, not the V collection, the Analog Lab 5 plugin, then it definitely works really well with that, and I think you'll like it. But otherwise, for me, I'm just using it as a general MIDI controller. I'm also going to do some other workflows with it as well. I intend to start seeing if it'll work well as a controller for my iPad running the Multitracks Player app on the iPad. See if that works for that. I'm also going to use it for some other functionality. I'll probably put it on top of, I've got an old Yamaha KX76 MIDI controller, which is really ancient. It's like first generation MIDI controller, but it has a great feeling keyboard on it, but it just doesn't have any controls. So I might just set this on top of it to use as the MIDI controller for all the programming functionality, and then just use the keyboard itself as just a dummy keyboard for just being able to play on it. So I got a lot of different uses that I want to use it for. So yeah, it's a great little device, and I think I can get some good use out of it. So that's my short review, but stay tuned because in a month or two, maybe even a little longer than that, after I get really familiar with using the device, I'm going to do a follow-up review and really kind of show the different workflows that I'm using it for, and hopefully I have a lot of new information to share at that time.